is a very difficult topic for many of us as physicians. In fact, we have many ways of avoiding the word. We try not to say the word cancer to a patient. We'll say something like, well, you have a mass. There's an irregularity on your scan. We're not sure what this is. But we try to avoid the C word at all costs. Because the reason why we avoid that is because once you say the C word, it's like this. Well, Mr. Jones, I took a very close look at your chest x-ray, and it looks like the spot on your lung may be cancer. Wah, 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 wah. They don't hear anything else that you say at that point. And you're done, and they're like, what? So what's wrong with the chest x-ray? Because of the shock that they're going through. I think all of us have known someone with cancer, right? Everybody, sure. So consider for a moment not just the disease, but the impact on someone mentally, emotionally, and physically. Because cancer is much more than a disease. It's affecting a person, right? It's affecting a family. It's affecting a life. And I pray that by the end of this presentation, you will not have a greater understanding of just cancer merely, but of hope for your life. Let's review yesterday a little bit. Anyone tell me what the cause of diabetes is? Very good. Not one person said sugar. That was great. Now, obviously, it's not good for you to eat sugar, right? Because sugar does make you fat, right? So that's a problem too. But the main issue is fat. Not just fat on you, but fat in the diet. That's the big, big issue. And does anyone remember some of the perhaps best ways to reverse diabetes? Exercise. Yeah, certainly diet is a component, but I can tell you that something I've seen especially in our church as Adventists is there's way too much emphasis on diet. Way too much. Remember, diet is only 1/8 of our game plan, right? 1/8, that's like 12%. Do you realize that? 13%? I mean, it's a component, but it's a component. And I would say that if I give a very frank interview of most of us, I'd say where most of us fall short is exercise. Wouldn't you say? I mean, I've known people very, very strict. Now, that's important to know as you're approaching diabetes, because if you're very, very strict in your diet, it's actually self-defeating. Did you know that? Let's say someone just did diet and didn't do any exercise. Why would that be problematic, especially in the long run? What do you think? For weight loss. Have you ever wondered why people diet but they just gain it all back? Have you ever wondered why that happens? Does anyone know why that happens? Yes, that's right. If you only diet, your body gets into a state of emergency. It senses that you're doing what? Starving, right? And when your body senses that you're starving, what do you think it does to your metabolic rate? It makes you idle slower, in other words. Things slow way, 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 way down. And the next time you get a hold of food, what do you think it does with that? Stores it because it's afraid you're going to go through famine again. However, if at the same time you're changing your diet, you're also increasing your exercise, what will happen to your metabolism? It will increase, or at least stay the same, because it's kind of fighting itself in a sense. So if you only diet, you're actually going to worsen yourself in the long run, because your body will sense that it's starving, and it will actually conserve fat. It will store fat. It'll save fat. So ultimately, you must exercise. That's the bottom line. But these are things to help you. And that's why diets never work. That's why lifestyle is the answer, right? Permanent change, not temporary change. You know, people during the early spring months, they're on these crash diets so they can get into their bikinis and their bathing suits in the summer. But then after that, it's going to be 3 times harder to lose the weight. You don't want to do that, right? Don't go on a diet, just change your lifestyle permanently. So then you'll have permanent change and not just temporary change. Does anyone remember kind of some of the creative ways we talked about yesterday? Oh, you remember that. That's funny. Yeah, the grocery stores probably got more business for their produce after last night's presentation. I don't get any kickbacks from the Apple Growers Association of America. I want you to know. And it's only of benefit because it's a high fiber fruit. But any high fiber food that's low calorie will serve the same purpose. You know, I've been to 150 different countries, and everyone was so worried that they had to go buy apples in this tropical place where there's no apples. I said, you guys can use bananas or plantains or papayas or whatever. They're like, oh, okay. We thought we had to have apples. I said, no. And next time I felt, you know, I got to change that to like mango or papaya or mangosteen or something like that next time I go to some of these other countries. So that's one. Any other ways you remember? No, what does that mean? What does that mean? If you think of the typical American program, yeah, we have to eat what? Breakfast. Absolutely. Did everyone have a big breakfast? Raise your hand if you had a big breakfast. Oh, wow. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you guys. And what if someone says, oh, no, if I start eating breakfast, I'll gain weight? What do you tell them? No, breakfast raises your metabolism by over 25% for the whole day. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, so you actually burn more calories eating breakfast. So you eat breakfast, and then what else about the sumo wrestler? Oh, don't eat late. You know, that's so hard because when I'm speaking, it's like I'll be sitting down to eat, and it's like, oh, can I ask you a question? Yeah, sure. I never get to eat. So the only time when I finally get to eat is when I like get back to my hotel room, right, or whatever church member I'm staying at, and then I finally get to eat something. So it's difficult for me, but I'm thankful that even though you may be eating late, just don't eat a big meal, right? If you're wanting to lose weight and you have to have the third meal, maybe just have fresh fruit or something like that. Something straightforward, something simple to digest and low fat, right? What do you not want to do after you eat? Yes, you don't want to go to sleep because that's exactly the way that you put on the fat. You guys are good. Anything else? Do you guys remember? The what? Yes, that's right. You remember Dr. Art Eulene's tip. So you use smaller utensils and you eat slower, right? If you chew 30 seconds between each bite, you actually will eat less and you'll be just as satisfied. Anything else you remember? Drink a lot of water. Absolutely. That's true. Water is very, very important. I mean, it's low calorie, 0, right? There's no calories in water. It can fill you up. It hydrates you. Many times people are eating because they're thirsty. They're not necessarily hungry. That's true. Anyone remember the thermic effect of food? That's the hard one. That's a little bit more medical. Anyone remember that? That's right. If you don't want to be fat, then don't eat fat. It's not rocket science, right? If you eat 100 excess calories of fat, how many calories of that does the body have to spend to convert it to you fat? Only 3 calories. Wow, you guys remember that. That's very, very good. So if you want to lose weight, make sure the bulk of your calories comes from carbohydrates and proteins, right? There's another branch of calories, and that's actually alcohol. Obviously, I would hope that you don't drink alcohol. You ever heard of the beer belly? The reason why that happens is that for every gram of alcohol, it's actually close to 7 calories per gram. Carbohydrates and proteins, anyone know how many calories per gram? 4.1. How many calories per gram of fat? 9.5. So alcohol is closer to what? It's closer to fat. That's why alcohol is not good. It puts on a lot of fat tissue. So let's go back to our PowerPoint that's vanished. Okay, cancer. Anyone know there's 7 signs and symptoms that the National Cancer Institute would want all lay people to know? And I will be going over those with you. 7 signs of cancer or symptoms. What do you think? Weight loss is truly one of them, but it's very nonspecific. You can have weight loss in a lot of things, so that didn't make the top 7. What? A lump. Who said that? Yes, a lump or a thickening. And that's the problem, is many people ignore those things, right? They think it will go away, right? I think that women do a much better job at this than men, because women are much more faithful in examining their bodies. They're like, oh, that spot's new. I've never seen that before. That's twice the size as it was, doctor. I know. And the guy's like, what? I have a spot? We didn't even know it was there. Women do regular breast exams. You ask a guy, have you ever done a testicular exam? What's that? Oh, that's nasty. That's playing with yourself. You know, it's true, isn't it? Women are a lot more responsible about their bodies than we are. It's sad. But an irregular lump or thickening, any others? Pain is a little bit too vague. What? Yes? Bleeding, yes, an abnormal discharge or bleeding. And I've heard people say this all the time. Oh, doc, that's just my hemorrhoid acting up. I'm like, how do you know you have a hemorrhoid? Have you looked and seen it? Well, no, I can't see down there. I'm like, well, then how do you know it's a hemorrhoid? I have this people tell me this all the time. Abnormal bleeding or discharge can be the first signs of cancer. I had a woman one time come to me, and she was in her 60s, and said, you know what, doc, it's just so funny. I'm feeling so good. I've changed my lifestyle, changed my diet. I'm exercising again. I got my period back. I said, you did? She had uterine cancer. It's not normal to have postmenopausal bleeding. It's uterine cancer until you prove otherwise. So you have to be aware of your body. Things that are perhaps positive to you are deadly to us as physicians. So don't assume anything, right? Be aware of what's happening and talk to your doctor, right? So abnormal bleeding or discharge, anything else? You guys are doing great. Weight loss too nonspecific, again. Yes, change in bowel or bladder habits, very important. That can be the first sign of colon cancer. Absolutely. No question. And again, it's not that, wow, I always have constipation and I still have constipation. That's not it. It's just somebody who normally has one and then kind of goes to the other now, or back. Someone who's regular and now they can't go to the bathroom, or vice versa. A change in bowel or bladder habits. Anything else? Fatigue is also one of them, but it's a little bit too nonspecific. There's a lot of things. How about up here? Focus up here. Cough, yes. One of the things that I hear people say all the time, yeah, I just got a little cold. For 3 months? I've had people tell me that. Oh, I just got a little cold. How long have you had that? Oh, maybe the last 6 months. That's long cold, don't you think? A cough or hoarseness can be the first signs of cancer. Hoarseness, right? And I'm not saying hoarseness for like 3 days after your flu, right? I'm saying something that persists. If people have trouble swallowing, right? Or painful swallowing, or kind of an upset stomach, don't just assume that it's acid reflux or something like that. Don't assume anything, especially if something has persisted. The nice thing about most cancers is that they don't like grow overnight, right? They come on gradually, so you have time to figure out what's going on. But those are the signs. There's actually one more. Anyone know? Difficulty in appetite, that's definitely one of them, but it's too nonspecific. A lot of other conditions have that. If vomiting, again, is too nonspecific, but this is a change in a wart or a mole. right? That little birthmark you've always had your whole life, it's like 3 times the size and it's starting to talk to you, then that's a problem, it's starting to change. So these are all the medical terms. This is just, pain, generalized pain in your abdomen, upset stomach. This is trouble swallowing. This is painful swallowing. Cough or hoarseness, lump or thickening, change in bowel bladders, bleeding or discharge, and then a sore that doesn't heal. Sorry, that was the other thing, kind of change in a wart or a mole or a sore that doesn't heal. I'll go over the change in the wart or a mole first. This is actually how we evaluate warts and moles as physicians. It's ABCD. Has anyone ever heard this? ABCD? Oh, wow. You guys are all health professionals. That's good. So asymmetry, that means it's different on one side than the other, right? If you put a mirror right here down the middle of us, we should roughly look the same on one side as the other. A little asymmetry is normal. People are like, oh, this ear is higher than the other one. I'm like, that's fine. Well, what about this? Oh, that's fine. Oh, this one is, no, that's fine. So a little asymmetry is normal in your body, but an actual wart or mole should be the same on one side as the other. Border, the border should be regular and not irregular or jagged. Color is C. It should be one color, not multiple colors. And then lastly, D is diameter. It should be smaller than 6 millimeters. And to give you an idea on what that is, like an eraser on the back of your pencil, it should be no bigger than an eraser, like the small round erasers, no bigger than that. Anyone know what the worst type of skin cancer is? Melanoma. Do you know why it's bad? Because it spreads. Squamous cell and basal cell carcinoma, or those types of skin cancers, they just invade locally. They don't metastasize or spread. Melanoma can go to your brain. So next time, especially a lot of you that are Caucasian in the audience, I'm not being racist or anything like that, but you will burn a lot easier than people that are darker pigmented. It's very important to have sunblock. Very, very important. It's essential, especially with people, anyone who have red hair here? Anyone with redhead? No? If you're a redhead, you have an abnormal gene for your melanin, most likely. Instead of regular melanin, you produce pheomelanin. That's what gives you the red hair. But that also has no protection against the ultraviolet rays. So basically, you need to call up NASA and get whatever they coat the space shuttle with and just dip yourself in that each time you go outside, and then reply every 4 hours, right? It's probably not that bad, but do remember to use a higher SPF rating, especially if you're fair-skinned or especially if you're a redhead. Very, very important. Because the problem is that the damage that you have from the sun now as a young person, you won't pay for until 20, 30 years later. And you're like, why did I get this melanoma? It was just like 40 years ago, right? When you were out in the sun forever and you were like a lobster. That's when it started. Anyone know what the most common type of cancer is? No. Skin. Isn't that funny? But we don't often think about it because it's not deadly. But of the big 3 cancers, the most common type is prostate/breast. But we'll get into that. This is kind of a review of skin cancers. So do you think this is cancer or not? It's not. It has a normal symmetry. If I draw a line like this, it's the same on one side as the other. Does that make sense? So this is not normal. There's if you divide it here, there's the Great Plains over here, and then the mountain is over here. That's asymmetrical, so that's melanoma. See the border? See how it's smooth? Right? This is actually a hemangioma, a strawberry hemangioma. You don't need to know that, but actually if you're a physician, you probably do need to know that. But this is not a normal border. This is like a blackberry border sort of thing. Kind of ragged, jagged. See, it's kind of going in here. That's melanoma. Color. This is one color, kind of all a brown color. That's just a wart. It's normal. This is not normal. There's got some black here, maybe some red going on, maybe some browns over here. That's melanoma. That's abnormal. Too many colors. Diameter, this is small, smaller than an eraser head. Now I want you to look at this one. See, this is the person's mouth here. Even though that's kind of flat, that's melanoma. That's abnormal. How do we detect cancer? Anyone know? There's many ways. There's lots of lab tests you can do. In the ER, I typically don't get lab tests for cancer, but there's places that give me a suspicion. Like when I order your CBC or your complete blood count and your white blood cell is 100,000 and you're not infected, it's leukemia, basically, until proven otherwise. So there's lots of lab tests that come back incidentally that can turn out to be cancer. Even in your urine test. I've had someone pick up kidney cancer on the urine test. One of the techs was very, very sharp, and they looked at the urine and they realized that it wasn't just kidney cells they were looking at. It was a malignant cell, just on a regular urine test. Kind of our point of care testing. This is a real true story. One of my nurses one time laughed at me and she said, I accidentally got a pregnancy test on a guy and it's positive. Isn't that funny? I said, it's not funny. Oh, he's a guy. He has cancer. Because there are some tumors that produce beta HCG, some germ cell tumors, and he ended up having cancer. So sometimes just incidental labs. Now don't go out and get pregnancy tests, guys, okay? That's very, very rare, okay? Very, very rare. But I'm just telling you, there's not any one good way to detect a lot of cancers. Even our imaging, people talk about, well, I want to get an X-ray or a CT or an MRI or a PET scan. By the time those things can pick up cancer, that cancer is already millions or billions of cells big. Did you know that? I mean, even a tumor that is less than a millimeter is just massive in terms of cell population. But I'm going to tell you that they have a modality that will detect cancer at one cell. Isn't that amazing? Not only can it detect it, how about detect it and destroy it at one cell? Is it a monoclonal antibody or something special like that? What do you think it is? What is it? The immune system. It is the only modality that can detect cancer at the molecular level, at one cell. It can find and destroy a cancer cell. In fact, right now, did you know every one of you has cancer cells forming in your body right now? But it is your immune system that keeps them at bay, right? That keeps you from developing that cancer to more than one or two or three cells, right? We're going to talk more about the immune system later. But let's go to number one cause of cancer death. What type of cancer? Nope. Well, let's just say number one cause of death, not even cancer death, number one cause of death. Anyone know what the number one cause of death in the U.S. is? It's heart disease, that's right. It's not diabetes, not yet. You remember that statistic from the CDC I shared with you? Scary. 1 out of every 3 children born after the year 2000 will die of diabetes. That's frightening. And if you're a minority, 1 out of every 2 African American or Hispanic children will die of diabetes. Isn't that frightening? We're facing an epidemic. The world is dying for the health message, folks. They need it desperately. We need it desperately, right? So number one cause of death is heart disease, but you know that there's a change right now? The NIH says that within the next 5 years, that will change. You know what will become the most common cause of death in the U.S.? Cancer, that's right, that's right. There's a shift. Now, why would there be a shift? I'll show you. You'll figure it out. Anyone know what cholesterol is? Does anyone know what cholesterol is? Does anyone know what the word means? Anyone know what the word means? Cholesterol. Does that sound familiar? Am I talking Greek? Yeah, you guys know what cholesterol is. But isn't that funny? That if you go back just 20, 30 years ago, people didn't know what it was. But all of you know what cholesterol is now. How many of you know what your cholesterol is about? Wow, most of you guys. That's amazing. So, how about LDL, HDL? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? All of you guys know. Isn't that amazing? What's LDL? It's bad. I heard that. That's good. HDL is good. Wow, you guys all know, see? These have to do with cardiac risk. This is low-density lipoprotein. You don't really need to know that. This is high-density lipoprotein. Don't really need to know. Well, if you're a doctor, you probably do need to know that. But anyway, these have to do with your cardiac risk. The higher this number is, the worse your risk is. The higher this number is, the less your risk is, right? And you guys knew that. That's pretty amazing. Oh, that's on the heart disease lecture, but that's not this one. This one's cancer. But yes, homocysteine is a risk factor for cardiac disease. There's lots of ways that you can, elevated homocysteine levels are an issue, but anyway, we can talk about that later. Who knows what saturated fat is? Everybody. Wow, that's great. Name a fat that's saturated fat. Lard. Butter. Sure, absolutely. So you guys know. That's also a risk factor for heart disease. Those are all risk factors for heart attack. And you guys know that. Do you know why people started to invent margarine? You know what the whole purpose of that was? To replace a what? Saturated fat with polyunsaturated or monounsaturated. Exactly. Isn't it interesting, though, that the shift now is from heart disease to what? Cancer. Because what's the problem with margarine now? Recently outlawed, actually, in fast food restaurants. They are not allowed to have any of this. New York was the first place. Trans fats. Because when you make margarine, right, you create those trans fats. Or you hydrogenate the fats. Have you heard of that? Partially hydrogenated soybean. Have you ever read that as an ingredient? Just put it back when you see that ingredient. Probably a lot better for you. But that's kind of the shift, is that we've exchanged a saturated fat now for a chemically altered fat. So we've exchanged heart disease now for cancer. That's another lecture. If you come into my ER and you say you're having chest pain, what will happen? EKG, that's right. What else? Would they just leave you in the waiting room? You go right back. And why do you think that is? Why are we so worried? Heart attack, that's right. So if you look at all these things, I believe the reason why there's a lot less heart disease than before is because we're educating people, right? My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, right? That's what we're trying to do here, is educate you. But if I asked you guys, what are the risk factors for heart disease? You'd probably know, right? Does anyone know? High cholesterol. Yes, high blood pressure. Smoking, absolutely. And the last one, we talked about it yesterday. Diabetes, yeah. Obesity is actually coming up. It's not a major risk factor yet, but it will be very soon. The newest risk factor, the major risk factor that's coming up, is sedentary lifestyle. That's going to be the next major it's going to join the big four. So you guys know that. But if I asked you what the risk factors for cancer are, you'd go, I don't know. If I asked you what blood tests would I check for your cardiac risk, you'd say HDL, LDL, cholesterol, right? I said, what bloods do I draw for cancer? CA125. Wow, there's like a physician out there somewhere. I can't even remember the last time I ordered one of those. Maybe last week, I don't know. But that's true. There's a lot more education. And so that's what we're trying to do, is educate you. And I don't think it's important for you to know the labs. I don't think it's important for you to know the medical terminology. But I do think it's important for you to know what the big cancers are and how to cure and prevent them. What's the number one cancer as far as death? Anyone know? Like, what causes the most cancer deaths in the United States? Lung cancer. That's right. Lung cancer, probably I can move through this pretty quick, because what do you think the number one risk factor for lung cancer is? Smoking. Thank you. And it's not like people don't know that. But it's funny, did you know that on the box of cigarettes they have to write now, smoking causes lung cancer, emphysema, heart disease? Did you know they have to write that now? And do you know why they have to write that? Because some people don't know. No one told me that smoking would give me cancer. And some of us like, really? You did not know that? That's like saying, wow, McDonald's, I didn't know they were going to make me fat, you know? Oh, but people say that though, right? And some people really don't know. So lung is the number one cause of cancer death. If you smoke, you have 7 times the risk as someone who does not smoke. I mean, obviously, people who are non-smokers also get lung cancer, but how do they get lung cancer? Ooh, you guys are very sharp. That's good. Did you know that they've recently passed laws in various states that you can't smoke anymore in public places? And do you know why? They were finding that these waitresses were coming down with lung cancer. These bartenders, they'd have emphysema. And they're like, wait a minute, I don't smoke. Why do I have emphysema? But why do they have those things? They're around it all the time. So now they've passed laws that you're not allowed to smoke in these public areas because you are choosing to smoke, but you're also choosing for someone else, aren't you? In fact, if you think about the most serious event in our country as far as terrorism, Twin Towers. Does anyone remember where they were when the Twin Towers occurred? Everybody raised their hand. Can you imagine if the Twin Towers occurred every day? I mean, it would really be the apocalypse, wouldn't it, if that happened? Do you think the news would be alarmed? Do you think they would have it on the front page of every newspaper? Twin Towers attacked again. Pentagon attacked. Eiffel Tower attacked. Empire State Building attacked, right? Every day there was that many people who died in a terrorist attack. But did you know that that's exactly what's happening? Every day. 2 jumbo jets colliding and killing all the passengers is the number of people that die of cigarettes every day. Why doesn't it make the headlines? Why isn't it in the news? Aren't their lives just as valuable as the lives of the people in the Twin Towers? Right? It's not as sensational, though, to see someone dying of emphysema or lung cancer, someone smoking out of the tracheostomy they have. I've seen people do it. We need the Lord. We can't break those kind of habits. But this is serious stuff, right? 3 million people a year. It's a lot of people. Any other cancers that smoking causes? I hear a lot of them, and you know what the answer to every one of those is? Yes. Lip, mouth, throat, larynx, trachea, lung, esophagus, stomach, liver, pancreas, leukemia, kidney, bladder, colon, cervix, penis, skin, and probably even more. Cancer is caused by cigarettes on many levels. There's hundreds of cancer-causing chemicals just by themselves. Each one of those chemicals is cancer-causing, but there's hundreds of them in cigarettes. Tobacco, let me tell you, is not one of the leaves for the healing of the nations. Just FYI, neither is marijuana. Not meant for you. You know, a lot of people have told me, hey, but I'm allowed to do whatever I want as long as I don't hurt others. Have you heard that? especially people who don't want to believe in God, they say, as long as I'm a good person and I don't bother anyone else, then who are you to judge me, right? Have you heard that? Is that true? Is that true? Does it really matter if you're not bothering anyone else? Well, let me tell you, you actually are bothering other people. Does anyone know what the number one cause of asthma in children is? From who? Oh, but doctor, I smoke outside. But what happens? That's right, I heard it over here. So how does it come back in? Well, I'm not smoking, I smoke outside, I put it out. Oh no, I changed my clothes. Oh no, what was that? Oh no. If you have a friend who smokes and is convinced, or I should say has deceived themselves into somehow thinking it doesn't affect their kids, tell them to go to a sauna and strip down completely naked, wrap themselves in a white sheet, and drink like several quarts of water over a period of an hour. Sweat it out, sweat it out. And when they unwrap that sheet, you know what they're going to find? It's just coated with yellow nicotine. It comes out your pores. Absolutely. But before you point fingers at the person who smokes, right? Many of us would not smoke. But did you know if you're 40 pounds overweight, it's like you're smoking? Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, wait a minute. Now the finger is, oh, no, right? The finger's pointing at you. You can blame that person who smokes, but brother and sister, if you're over 40 pounds overweight, that is equal to the same risk as smoking for your health, right? People say, don't judge me because my sins are different than yours, right? Right? So number one cause of pediatric asthma is secondhand smoke from parental smoking. Consider this. If you smoke in a closed room with a baby, they've done studies on the lungs. If you just smoke a pack of cigarettes in that room, did you know that that baby has smoked 9 of those cigarettes? It's the equivalent of actually putting the cigarette on a baby, like a mini cigarette, obviously, and having that baby smoke 9 of those cigarettes. That's the amount of damage. Now, the reason why it's more is because the baby's body to surface area ratio is different. Does that make sense? The baby's a lot smaller, so it's a lot more affected than you and I are. Let me tell you, people are affected by our decisions, aren't they? Absolutely. So that's a half a pack a day that your baby's been smoking. I don't think that's a good idea. I knew a guy one time, I said, how long have you been smoking for? I've been smoking for 60 years. I said, how old are you? 66. I said, what? He actually started smoking when he was 6. The younger you are, the harder it is to quit. And that's not just true of smoking, that's true of any habit. Do you realize that? The younger you start, the harder it is to break. But you know what the good news is? If you establish good habits in your children, those are also hard to break too, right? So there's a positive side to this. If you break the habit earlier, it's going to be easier down the line to stay quit. I remember one patient complained and they said, oh, you know, my kid has asthma attack because we had a barbecue this weekend. What do you think about that? Do you think it was the barbecue? Or what do you think this parent did? They smoked, but they were trying to find some other cause to blame. Oh, it's the pet. I knew we got to get rid of that dog, right? They'll blame everything else except for them, right? I remember one patient's family came in and said, oh, you know, I want you to write a prescription for Motrin and I want you to write a prescription for a nebulizer machine. Now, to give you an idea, how much does a bottle of Motrin cost? $6? How much does a pack of cigarettes cost? I didn't write the prescription for them. Did you know that? And they're like, why? I said, because just don't buy one pack of cigarettes and buy the Motrin. Both the kid's parents smoked. The kid was 7 months old. Both the grandparents smoked in the room. I said, I won't write the nebulizer machine. What? Why not? I said, because he doesn't need a nebulizer machine. He needs every adult who touches him to stop smoking. All 4 adults that touched the 7-month-old baby smoked. Who's going to advocate for this 7-month-old kid? He can't even talk. Do you realize that? He can't even talk to say, don't do this to me. But I will advocate for him. But they don't like me when I do that. Believe me. You should have seen the expression on their face. I said, I won't write it. They're like, I thought they were going to take me out right there. So, there was a question yesterday that talked about overcoming. And we're going to talk about this. I think the principles to overcoming cigarettes, helping your friend do that, applies to any habit or any sin, right? So what would you say is the most popular way to quit smoking? Most common. Cold turkey. Amen. I like that. Well, ultimately, did you know even if it's cold turkey, it still is Jesus? Remember the quote from Steps to Christ I read yesterday? When people make a sincere reform from an effort to do right, it's the power of Christ, right? That's helping them, even though they don't know him. God's so good, isn't he? He doesn't have to take the credit. He's willing to do good without the person knowing, right? And we should too. So helping someone out to quit smoking, you could say, yeah, you may not be able to get this or that sort of method to quit, but cold turkey is the way that most people try. Does anyone know what the most successful method is, though? Amen. Amen. That's great. Actually, that's not studied, so I don't know that for sure. But this is actually studied. A lot of people said breathe free, and I wish it was true that our program was the most successful. But the most successful is that if you have a heart attack right now, and I walk in your room, and I tell you to quit smoking as the doctor, did you know that's the most successful method? If you tell someone to quit smoking in the light of an acute MI, that is the most successful method. A higher percent of people quit smoking permanently from that than anything else. Let me tell you, death is a strong motivator. But love is stronger than death, right? Amen, right? But that's the key, is like when your friend is going through serious change or serious upheaval in their lives, you can be there not only to comfort them, but did you know that's the time that they can make change the easiest? Because in crisis, people are willing to do some serious things. Did you know that? Praise God. But, Mark Twain said, I've quit smoking thousands of times. Have you ever heard that? But what does that imply? He started again. Why do most people start up again? Do you know what the reason is? Yes, who said environment? Yes, environment. They said, well, I was under a lot of stress and someone around me was smoking and, right? So there's triggers, right? And this is very important. Go to Romans chapter 13, verse 14. That has a key to victory. Romans chapter 13, verse 14. It gives you a very important insight as to why we fail and also how we can succeed. First step, but put ye on the Lord what? Jesus Christ, and make no provision for the flesh to fulfill its lusts. Do you see the concepts there? Number one, we need this higher power. Jesus Christ, right? Number one is you plug in to the source of power. Put on the Lord Jesus Christ. But there's something else for you to do. Do you realize that? It says here what? So what does that mean, make no provision? Tell me that. So I take the pack of cigarettes, I quit smoking, I put it in the top drawer. What do I do with all the cigarettes I have? Get rid of them. So that applies to any other habit, right? If you drink, what should you do with the alcohol? Oh, I'll just save it for Aunt Matilda when she comes over. It would be a good Christmas present, right? Would you do that? Because what's going to happen? You're going to go back and drink it. Can you imagine if someone quit cocaine and they kept a stash in their drawer? All of us would say, what kind of dope fiend move was that? Right? We'd wonder if the person's really serious about quitting, right? But that's the same about any sin, right? If someone is addicted to pornography, then don't give yourself access to pornography, right? Cut off your internet connection at home, right? You have to go to the library and do it because you're in the library. It's like everyone watching you, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? You don't make any provision to fall back into sin. You cut off the avenues. Just think of all the places where you've fallen into sin or all the situations. Then eliminate those, right? A lot of people say, my easy chair is a big trigger. Get rid of the easy chair or move your furniture around. Ashtrays, right? Get rid of all the ashtrays. Get rid of the matches. Get rid of the lighters, right? Some people say, in my morning, I'd have a routine. I'd drink my cup of coffee and then quit the coffee. Does that make sense? You want to get rid of all the triggers for sin because you don't want to make provision, right? Don't give yourself a chance or an opportunity to find yourself in temptation's grasp. What's the next most deadly cancer after lungs? Anyone know? Well, prostate, that's true for men. But in general, right, considering men and women, well, breast doesn't affect women. So colon cancer, right? Colon cancer. Does anyone know who Dr. Burkitt was? He's a physician that actually looked at tribes in Africa, and what he found was that tribes in Africa didn't get colon cancer. But we did in the United States. And he started to look at why, and he found that there was something in their diet that was not found as much in the American diet. And it was so funny because this component wasn't even absorbed by the body. Isn't that strange? How in the world could something you don't even absorb be important? In fact, it was thought to be so useless they called it roughage. And what was that? Fiber. That's right. Very good. So fiber is extremely important. Does anyone know the two types of fiber? Soluble and insoluble. Does anyone know what they do? Do you need both of them? You do need both of them, but for different reasons, right? So what do? Anyone know? So they sweep out the colon, right? That's a good way of putting it. One type of fiber, what fiber sweeps out the colon? Soluble or insoluble? Insoluble, right? The insoluble fiber increases transit time. That's kind of a medical jargon to how long it takes to go from here to when you see it again, right? And do you know how you can measure your transit time? It's very easy. Anyone like beets? Did you know you just eat a big plate of beets? You will see them again. And you just measure from when you ate it to when you see it again. And ideally, you don't want your transit time to be like 2 days or more. You know what I mean? You want your transit time to hopefully be 24 hours or less, right? Now, if it's just like 5 or 6 hours, you've got something going on, right? It shouldn't like just go straight through. The other way you can do transit times, you can eat corn, but I think I like the beet idea better. So insoluble fiber is very important for regularity, for transit time. Now, I can tell you that it doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are, you still need fiber, right? Before I was a Christian, I would go camping every summer. Well, I still like to go camping. But when you go camping, what sort of foods do you eat on camping traditionally? Beef. Like what? What do we make? Hamburgers, right? What else? Hot dogs, right? So hamburgers, hot dogs, s'mores, right? S'mores are what? Marshmallows and chocolate, right? What other foods do you bring when you go camping? What kind of bread do you put the hot dog and the hamburger on? White bread, right? And if you're a really starving college student, what do you buy like a box of for 10 cents each? Ramen, right? So when you don't have any money like I didn't, you buy a bunch of ramen. So check this out. I'm eating hamburgers, hot dogs, marshmallows, chocolate, ramen. What do I not have? Did you know it was over a week before I had a bowel movement? That's scary. That's really scary for a young person, right? I was like worried. I'm like, it's not coming out. I just keep eating, but nothing's coming out. And I was frightened. I didn't know why. But it's because why? I mean, I didn't eat any fiber at all. Do you realize that? And even though I was young and healthy, we were active, we were running around, we were hiking every day. I'm like, I just keep eating, nothing's coming out. And then finally, after a week, I had sweet freedom. So remember that when you're thinking about fiber, because what types of foods have no fiber? Meat or animal products, right? So cheese, milk, butter, eggs, meat, fish, chicken, pork, all those things, they have no fiber, right? So any animal products, and also white bread, white rice, that has less fiber. What things have a lot of fiber? Sure, whole grains. What else? Fruits and vegetables, yes, and beans. That's right. Any plant foods, right, have lots of fiber. Fiber is very important, not just when you're going camping, but at other times too. What about soluble fiber? Does anyone know what soluble fiber does? Soluble fiber does help to fill you up. But it's interesting. Soluble fiber does interesting things, other interesting things. Do you remember the apple example I used yesterday in the Q&A? Does it matter if you drink apple juice, applesauce, or an apple? Yes. What does it matter? Fiber, that's right. So when you have the fiber, the body will absorb the blood sugar in what way? Slower, right? It's better for you. If you look at the insulin and glucose curves of those three things, same amount of calories, right? The apple looks kind of like this. The applesauce looks like this. And the apple juice looks like that, right? So when you eat soluble fiber, you absorb the glucose slower. Not only is that better for regulating your blood sugar, but it's now associated with longevity. Did you know that? That's why they tell you to eat a high fiber cereal in the morning for breakfast, because it regulates your blood sugar all day long. Anyone know what else soluble fiber does? Yes, it does. Very good. Soluble fiber is the only real reliable way to get rid of what from your body? Cholesterol. It actually binds to the cholesterol or the bile salts. That's where your cholesterol is. Because when you eat fat, your liver produces bile. Did you know that? Like the green stuff, right? And it is digesting fat with the bile, but that bile is very high in cholesterol. And what they've found is that one of the worst things for your body is to have those bile salts in long contact with the colon wall. So if you have a very slow transit time and you eat a high-fat diet, what are you going to have? Cancer, right? Also, they found that certain meat proteins, if they're in contact with the colon wall for a long period of time, they induce cancer in the cells. Many fibers like pectin, soluble fibers, pectin, lignin, things like that, they're antioxidants just in themselves, even though you don't absorb them. Why would obesity be related to low fiber? Why do you think? What do you think? If you eat fiber, how many calories per gram does fiber have? 0. In fact, there's a diet that the Lifestyle Center of America has implemented, and it's so simple. It is only based on fiber. Did you know that? All you have to do for all of your dietary needs is make sure you get 40 grams of fiber a day. That's it, period. End of story. If you eat 40 grams of fiber a day, they guarantee you will lose weight. Isn't that simple? You just add up the fiber and what you're eating. Once you get 40 grams a day, you've reached your goal. I think that's a pretty ingenious idea. So obesity is related to that because fiber has no calories, but it fills you up, right? We talked about the glycemic index in the apple. Can a bran muffin save America? Well, interestingly enough, if you look at the incidence of colon cancer, they've done many studies on fiber and colon cancer, and they have found that there is a linear relationship, right? Meaning the less fiber you eat, the higher the risk of colon cancer, right? It's an inverse relationship. So the higher your fiber content, what happens? It drops. And they found that if the average American would just eat the amount of fiber found in a generous bran muffin, 12 grams of fiber, that you'd cut colon cancer by half in our country. 50,000 cases of colon cancer would just evaporate. That's it. The power of a bran muffin. When I was at Stanford, I had a pediatric intern. She was doing her emergency department rotation. She was a great doc, very enthusiastic, very happy, very good with patients, great bedside manner. Now, the pediatric interns were underneath us. We would still run the department because that's what we were used to. So we would kind of supervise them, and I looked forward to seeing her again 6 months later because they do 2 months during their year. And so I said, oh, such and such coming back? And they're like, no. I said, oh, did she drop out of the program? They're like, Riesenberger, she's dead. And I'm like, what? She got breast cancer and was dead within 5 months. In her 20s. The third most common cause of cancer death is breast and prostate. We're not going to talk about prostate, I'm just going to talk about breast. 1 out of every 8 women in this room will be diagnosed with breast cancer at one point or another. And the reason why this cancer is especially devastating is because it not only attacks a woman's body, but it attacks her identity. Do you realize that? It attacks who she feels she is as a woman, as female. It is very important to understand not just the physical aspect of it, but the psychiatric aspect of it. How do you think I dealt with this tragedy? When they dropped this bomb on me and said my pediatric intern wasn't going to be showing up, what do you think I did? We raised $50,000 for a Race for the Cure in her name. I ran a 5K, and I came in actually first for my category. So I was very thankful for that. I raised $10,000 for her foundation. The rest of us all together, we raised a total of $50,000 to help other people who got diagnosed with breast cancer at a young age. It was specifically, we wanted that. Is this an isolated case? No. As I said, 1 in 8. Attacks your health and your identity. Have you ever heard of the types of breast cancer? A common phrase that we use as physicians is, well, this breast cancer is blank sensitive. Have you heard that? What is it? What's this blank? It's a hormone. Estrogen sensitive, right? And this is the concept that I want to focus in on. There's many causes of cancer, but hormonal is a huge issue. Now, are hormones all negative? Are all hormones negative? No. Did you know that there's a verse in the Bible that a lot of people think is very chauvinistic? It's kind of funny. It says that the woman will be saved in childbearing. Did you know that? And they're like, see? Woman's place is in the kitchen, barefoot pregnant, right? So people say that. But you know what's funny? Is that the verse is true when you understand it. Did you know that when a woman has a child, that if she has at least one child, that it drops her risk of breast cancer and ovarian cancer and uterine cancer? There is a positive aspect to having a child. Did you know that? That hormonal cascade creates a positive environment in the body, not just during the pregnancy, but for the rest of your life. So the next time you get the funny look on your face when you read that verse, remember, part of it is true. Maybe not the chauvinistic part that people are thinking about, but the physiological part is correct. At least one child is very beneficial for cancer risk for women. However, a lot of the hype today is that we're getting estrogen not from our bodies, but from where? Food, right? Estrogens, we're worried about estrogens in what? Meat, right? And dairy, yeah, exactly. So animal products, we're worried because they are pumping these animals full of what? Hormones, right? Now, why do you think they're doing that? Why would they pump animals full of hormones? They want them to grow faster because if you're a dairy farmer, what good is the calf to you? It's not producing any milk. Do you understand that? So what do you want that calf to do? Grow up, right? Or if you're a chicken farmer, what good is the chick to you? Right? You want it to start laying eggs, right? Or if you're a beef farmer, you don't want to just slaughter the calf, right? You want it to be big, right? So that's why they use these hormones, because they don't want to sit around and wait for these animals to mature normally. They want to actually get some money back from these animals, right? So that's the big issue, is that this hormone is finding its way in our foods. But did you know that's not the true risk? The true risk of the hormonal exposure comes from you. Where do you think the estrogen comes from that creates the risk in a woman's body? Well, most of the estrogen does come from your ovaries, but that's not where the big risk is. I'm going to give you a hint. You already know the answer to this question. I'll prove it to you. Have you ever noticed that there are certain women, especially ones that like exercise a lot, right? Or these ultra marathoners, or these really, really very high-end models? What do all those women like lose? They lose their body fat, and what goes away? Their what? Something that happens every month. Their period, right? Have you ever noticed that? That women, when they get to a very, very low percent of body fat, what happens? Their periods go away. Have you wondered why that is? Have you ever thought about it? Did you know that the estrogen your body produces has to be converted by the fat cells? It's called peripheral conversion of estrogen. And what it does is it converts the estrogen to the active form. So if your body fat percentage is less than 12, actually that's the number, if it's less than 12, you don't have enough active estrogen to muster up a period. So that's a problem. Now, let's look at the reverse. What do you think would cause an overproduction of active estrogens? If you were what? Obese. Have you ever noticed that when women are very morbidly obese, especially, their cycles are just all over the place? Have you noticed that? That's because their hormones are totally out of whack. They're getting a way, way overdose of that active estrogen. And we have found that this phenomena alone has a linear relationship with breast cancer. Before menopause, a normal weight woman will have a risk, let's say, of 1 for breast cancer. If you're overweight, it's 2 times. If you're obese, it's 3 times. Now watch this. For postmenopausal women, if your normal rate, it's still 1. If you're overweight, 500% increase. If you are obese, 12 times the risk. Does anyone remember what the risk for lung cancer was by smoking? increase? 7 times? What's this? Oh, no. Oh, no. As Seventh-day Adventists, this is a huge issue for us because we say, well, we don't have lung cancer, but we have a lot of prostate cancer and a lot of breast cancer. And the issue is that, folks, you can be vegan, but you can be overweight. Do you realize that? Did you know French fries are vegan? Right? Soda is vegan, right? You can have a major weight and health problem, even eating the right diet, quote unquote, right? Over 40 pounds of excess fat, it's like smoking, folks. It's actually 40 to 60 pounds, but there's different discrepancies in different studies. But the point is that once you get to a certain amount of excess weight, it's causing some health problems. High blood pressure, right? Heart disease, osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, right? So consider that. So how do you help someone to lose weight? Well, let me tell you how not to tell someone to lose weight. Telling someone they're fat does not help them. Does that make sense? Don't you think they know that already? I had a man who came into the ER, and I remember all the other staff were just making fun of him. I heard the charge nurse saying, okay, we got another big boy in room 7. And the other attending said, why do they keep sending us these beached whales? And I turned to my professor. This is the only time I ever defied my professor in residency. And I said, sir, if this man was your brother, would you be saying that about him? And he said, excuse me, Father Tim. And so I just grabbed the chart and I went and I saw the patient. And when I saw this guy, he was 500 pounds. He was actually over 500 pounds. And the problem was he had abdominal pain, so I was worried about appendicitis. So I needed to get a CAT scan. The CAT scan guy says, ain't no way he's fitting through the scanner, number 1. Number 2, even with the OPIT scanner, my table will break. He's too heavy. I called the zoo, the local zoo, because they have a CAT scanner. You know what their weight limit is? Several tons. And they put the elephants through their scanner. And they said, yeah, no problem. Yeah, 700 pounds, not a problem. If you take 1,000, 2,000 pounds. Oh, is this a human? Folks, if I'm calling the zoo to get a CAT scan on this guy, do you think he knows he has a problem? He probably knows. He doesn't need you to say that, right? The best way to help someone is not to condemn, but to help, to try to save. I had a friend of mine who was actually the director for one of our hospitals. He was the food service director, and he was morbidly obese. And can you imagine how much teasing he got? Doing a little quality control there, right? It's horrible. You laugh, but I'm sure he got teased about this all the time. He had diabetes, he had high blood pressure, he had high cholesterol, right? But he came to Weimar. And he did so amazing. In 19 days, he lost so much weight that he was able to quit all of his medicine. Diabetes and high blood pressure and cholesterol, everything normalized. He was still overweight though. And he came back to that Adventist hospital and he made everything in the cafeteria vegan. Isn't that crazy? It's amazing. But did you know that people still criticized him and made fun of him because of what he looked like? He was still overweight. But what they didn't see is that I went with this man at 5 a.m. every morning and we walked 5 miles. One morning he actually popped his ankle. He's like, I can still keep going. I said, you're not going anywhere. I'm calling an ambulance. You may not realize what the person is struggling with who's overweight. The best way to help them is get up in the morning and walk with them. Teach them how to cook better, right? Give them a hand up, right? Not a criticism down. That's the best way to help people. I'm going to go beyond the causes and types of cancers for a moment because I think this is the most important portion of this lecture. What is cancer? Someone tell me, what is cancer? Yeah, there's a bunch of cells that are multiplying, right? but they're multiplying out of control, right? It's not rapidly, because your cells in your hair are multiplying rapidly, your skin cells, right? Your GI cells, they're all multiplying very rapidly. Cancer is cells that multiply, not necessarily rapidly or not, but they multiply without respect to other organs or tissues around them. Does that make sense? Right? When you cut yourself, you better hope that your cells multiply, right? But they multiply until what? Till they meet another healthy cell, right? When they bridge the gap, they stop. Does that make sense? That is what cancer is. Cancer is something that multiplies out of control, not necessarily fast, because brain tumors are slow growing. Did you know that? But they multiply without respect to surrounding tissues or organs. In fact, what they will do is they will create something called angiogenesis factor, and they will steal the blood supply from surrounding tissues. They will crush surrounding organs, right? So they multiply without respect to the cells around them. Did you know that certain lung cancers, they can create a syndrome called SVC syndrome? And here's what happens. The lung tumor gets so large that it actually kinks off your superior vena cava. Now, what is that? That's the big vein that drains blood into your heart. Now, what do you think happens if a tumor blocks off the return from the heart, return to the heart? Your blood, your heart's not seeing any blood return. What do you think's going to happen to you? Your blood pressure will go to 0, right? And what will happen after that? You will die. But have you considered this? That if you die, what happens to the cancer? It will also die. I want you to think about that very carefully for a moment. Now I'm going to show you that though cancer has only one purpose, and that's what? Itself, right? It grows, it steals resources, it steals nutrients, it steals circulation, it will crush other organs. But did you know in the end what happens to it? It dies. It destroys itself. But consider this. Those of you who studied molecular biology, single-celled organisms, no matter how simple an organism is, there's one basic law of what? Self-preservation, right? That's a basic fundamental law in even just single-celled organisms. If there's something nasty, what do they do? Kind of wiggle away from it, right? If they sense some negative impetus or chemical or toxic whatever, they flee. But not all. There is one exception to that rule in the realm of nature. Did you know that? There is one exception to the law of self-preservation. And you know what that exception is? Remember the modality that can detect cancer at one cell? It is the immune system. The immune system, when it senses something toxic, instead of fleeing, it will charge. And the way the immune system works, does anyone know how it works? Does anyone know how the immune system defends your body from bacteria and viruses? Yes, that's right. I see Dr. Pandit doing it. When it sees a bacteria, it will actually extend its cell walls, and it will do something called phagocytosis. It will actually take the toxic invader where? Into itself. And do you know what happens then? People think it eats it. It doesn't really eat it. What it does is it produces things called lysozyme, superoxide dismutase, perioxidase. You don't need to know that. Well, if you're an immunologist, you probably need to know that. But these are chemicals that are powerful oxidizing agents. And they will latch onto the bacteria cell wall and release their contents. But remember, when they release their contents, where are they releasing them? Inside. And it hurts. That's why a white blood cell can only engulf about 12 bacteria before itself will die. And can you imagine, it gets to 8, 9, right? Maybe it's time to retreat back to the bone marrow, right? Or the spleen, or the lymph nodes, right? So they can regroup. Do the white blood cells do that? They fight to the death. They will die defending you. In fact, there are certain organisms, and I've studied these in electron microscopes, where if the white blood cell can't defeat the organism, it keeps losing and losing the battle, the white blood cells will wall off the organism. They will join hands and surround the organism and become fibroblasts. Tuberculosis is one. They will surround the organism and seal it off to protect you. They will allow their whole bodies to die and keratinize. They will become living barriers to defend the body. The only single-celled organism that does not self-preserve. But what's amazing about the immune system is though it fights to the death, though it's willing to become a living barrier to defend you, when it dies, it will be reborn. In the bone marrow, it lives again to fight again. Are you seeing something? Cancer, right? The most selfish thing on the planet. But the law of self-serving is the law of self-destruction. Did you know that? And the only thing that can defeat it is the law of self-sacrifice, is the immune system. The white blood cells that sacrifice all that they have, that they will die. They will even wall off an invader. Like if you get a splinter and the immune system can't beat it, it'll wall it off. Tuberculosis, it'll wall it off. It's amazing. I believe God himself has given that as an example to us, to help us to see that in this life, it's not about number one. You know, you look at people that are famous or rich or powerful, and many of them want to do what? Serve themselves. But did you know what happens in the end? They die. And they die empty and unfulfilled. But the happiest people on earth are who? Those who serve others. The law of self-sacrifice is the law of self-preservation. Did you know that? To give is to live. Consider this for a moment. I want you to take a very honest and frank look at your life today. I will bet that 95% of the things you do are self-serving. If you think about why you did this and why you did that, it was either to benefit you or your family, I guarantee you. And people wonder why they're not happy. Do you know who receives the greatest blessing during this weekend? I'm one. You know why? Because I am filling and fulfilling the destiny of my creation. I'm living the law of the immune system. Did I get a lot of sleep last night? No. Did I get a lot of sleep the night before? No. Why? For you. I'm not only hearing the messages, but I'm speaking them, I'm reading them, I'm editing them at home, right? I hear the message like 5 times. Take a serious look at your life. And you will find the great controversy in the battle between cancer and the immune system. And I believe that if you take an honest look, you will come to the conclusion that self-sacrifice is the law of life. And I believe if you make that decision that you will no longer live for yourself, that you will no longer plan for yourself, that you will take a ruthless inventory and say, what are these things for? Are they for others or for myself? I think that you will find that the same system that can defeat cancer, the immune system, is also the same system that will make you, the body, triumphant. Not just physically, but spiritually.